Hey, what's up, y'all? I am taking some time to finally do my live that I promised to do last week, but we had the flu running through the house, so I had to cancel. And so now I've got some time. And I'd like to tell you a little bit about my new book, It's My Turn, why I wrote this book, what you can expect, how it started. And this book is something that I actually started writing in 2020. And I realized there were so many things that I was going through personally and reflecting on just throughout my life, throughout my family life, throughout my business life, career, relationship. There were so many things. And I decided to write this book to help support my healing and also to support my clients, the people who I coach. There are so many lessons that I've learned along the way that this book is not just a memoir. It's actually something that I wrote to support you in your journey. If you are trying to get more clarity in your life, if you are trying to work through emotional integrity, emotional intelligence, if you are trying to have more courage to speak up in the workplace, if you are experiencing confusion about your career and purpose and direction, there are so many ways to reflect and help gain that clarity. And many people who are not working with me still need the opportunity to reflect. And I'm hoping that this book can serve as a gift, as a guide, and as a way to help so many people beyond just those that I work directly with. And I appreciate all of you who have already pre ordered the book. It is available for pre order in the link in my bio. And I just want to give a little bit of info about why I wrote it. And so, this book, like I said, I started writing it in 2020, and it is a book that's about 165 pages. I honestly am not a book reader. I like to listen to audiobooks. So I wrote this in a way that it makes it easy to read. You could probably read it in a couple of hours. There's a lot of reflection tools. So you may spend more time than that actually doing some of the work because each chapter does have some work that you can do just as you reflect on your own journey. And so it's a three-part book. And in part one, I discuss something called the performance era. And that's all about realizing that I was spending a lot of time pretending to be okay with things that I wasn't okay with, or trying to fit into spaces that I didn't feel like I fit into, like in the workplace. Being a biracial woman, I felt for a long time like I couldn't get the same opportunities that other people got in business because of my race, because of also being a woman. I had to break a lot of those myths. And I mean, there is research that it's actually more difficult for minorities and women, but it doesn't mean that it's impossible. It just is a little harder and it takes more work, but it's also how you position yourself. And so there's a lot of things I learned along the way. And in part one of this book, I really dig into that. And even back from childhood, like I had grown up feeling like I wasn't cool enough to hang out with the cool girls, or I was not really accepted by people I wanted acceptance from. So there was a lot of why do I care what these people think that I needed to figure out? Because I did used to care a lot about what people thought. And there's times maybe I still do, but it's not in the same way. I want to serve in my purpose. I want for people to know what I stand for, and that's important to me. But I also know that if someone's just committed to misunderstanding you, then you shouldn't waste time and energy trying to get people to understand you or appreciate you because they're not going to, they don't want to. And that took a lot of time for me to figure out too. So the performance era is part one. And then in part two of my book, it's called The Reckoning. And that is when I kind of had enough and realized I've got to change some things I'm doing and how I'm showing up in my life, at work, at home. And I hit that burnout phase where I was just so tired of pretending to be okay with things that I wasn't okay with. I was tired of pretending to be somebody I wasn't, or agree with things that I didn't agree with because I was in a room with people who had a opinion that everyone seemed to share except for me. So I would go along with whatever was said because I didn't want to be a disruptor. I didn't want to waste my energy on people thinking negatively of me because I didn't agree with them. And that caused some burnout. So that is part two of the reckoning. Even in friendships, even at home life. I mean, being brave enough to speak up and have courage to say, like, I'm actually not okay with this. I actually don't like that, is something that's brave and it takes strength to do. But it is easy for some people to just sit back and not hold boundaries, not allow for others to understand their values, not stand in their truth, and just bend to whatever other people want. And you can only do that for so long before you burn out, before you feel like enough is enough. And so that is part two of this book. And there are some prompts, there are some tools to help you start to think about, is this something I'm doing? And if you've had enough, maybe this chapter or this section of the book will help you to determine how you can get away from it. And part three of my book is called The Turnaround. And that is the part where I decided I had enough and I started making the changes. I started being myself again. I started trusting myself. I started speaking up. I started sharing what I thought at work. And there's a respectful way to communicate with people. You don't just have to shut people down and cut them off. And if you disagree with someone, it's okay to disagree. It's okay to be respectful and let them know that, especially in meetings where people are asked for their opinion. And then a lot of times people don't speak up because they are afraid of not having other opinions agree with them. They're afraid of being the only one who thinks that. And it's actually a good thing to be the person who doesn't agree with everything and who has a different way of thinking. And that's something that a lot of companies value, I think, depending on who you're working with. It's easy to also see who you can trust, even at home and friendships outside of work, as you start to share of who you are, what you stand for, and you stop bending and you stop allowing people to step over your boundaries, you do start to attract the people who are meant to be in your life, who you are meant to work with. And it doesn't feel as awful. You're not as burnt out. Because even though you may experience burnout and you make some changes, it doesn't mean those things are just going to stop. Like there's no magic solution. It doesn't mean people are going to stop treating you a certain way. What changes is how you respond to it and what you're willing to accept. A lot of times we have boundaries that we put in place to protect ourselves. And there are some people who walk all over those boundaries, and you have to remember why you put them there in the first place. And if it's possible for you to just remove yourself from dealing with those people, that's a boundary and you're well within your right to do that. But if you have to continue working with someone, there are also ways to manage that. There are conversations you can have, there are things you can do to protect your peace and to protect your energy. And that part three in my book digs into. And that is where I also introduced the Playful Power Method. And throughout the rest of the book, from part three on, every single chapter has a playful power activation. And so this allows for you to explore how to implement these things. And so I'm just going to take a look at one example. So, playful power activation number three. This comes up when we talk about regulation in your body. Like you get nervous, you get anxious when you've got a presentation to do, or you've got a big meeting with a new client or a pitch that you're preparing for. And so there are reflections. And one of them, for example, is asking this question: what does dysregulation feel like in your body? What have you normalized that are actually signs of survival mode? What triggers your fawn, flight, freeze, or fight response, and why? So then it gives you a chance to think about that. What is actually happening that creates this panic or anxiety? And what have you normalized? Because 9 times out of 10, this has shown up before, and now it's something you're just noticing. There's also a way to try something different. And so I do mention ways to something to try, which is one example, creating a regulation ritual. So thinking about like a song that grounds you, a phrase that centers you. And example of a phrase is I choose peace. I don't rush truth. I choose honesty. I choose courage. Just telling yourself these things when you feel the anxiety coming up, the boldness that you need to have to continue on in those meetings, to have the conversations, to present to a large audience. Those are just affirming phrases you can say to help kind of regulate yourself, to ground yourself. There's also a space you can step into when you need to reset and kind of like get away from people. So a lot of times at work, some people will go to the bathroom or they'll go to their car. Um, At home, you might have a prayer closet that you go into, and that is something you can practice until your body knows that you're safe without having to be scared anymore. And as many times as you have to step away, and then do that. This is just some example of what to expect in the book. And it is 3 parts. There are so many tips and tools in this book. I'm very proud that I finally have finished it. It's been many years in the making, and it is available for pre-order. I am going to host a launch party in Houston, January the 8th, 2026. It will be downtown in Houston from 6:30 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. And I would encourage you to come if you're in the area. Tickets to that event are also available on my website. You can pre-order the book. I will bring the books to the event. I will have signed copies available for the first 50 pre-orders, and I'll also have books available for sale at the event. So I would love to see you there. This book is so meaningful to me. I really hope that it helps a lot of professionals, a lot of leaders, a lot of parents with these concerns and frustrations when it comes to getting clarity, to having courage, to having emotional integrity, and trusting yourself, trusting your gut, speaking your truth, calling things out when they're not okay, and not being afraid to speak up and stand up for yourself, because there are a lot of people who benefit from silence. They benefit from you not speaking up at home and in the workplace, and they're used to you being comfortable. You're used to silencing yourself for comfort. And that is something that won't get you a promotion. It's not going to make you more money. It's not going to move you forward in life. It's definitely not going to bring you joy. So it's important to know you've got to have clarity of what's going on, who you are, what your values are, courage to speak up, stand in them, and lead from a place of genuine emotional integrity, because that will take you further in life than shrinking and silencing and negotiating your peace, because life is too short. So thank you for watching. Please pre-order the book, and I hope to see you soon. Thank you so much.